You can get so much out of people if you motivate them and if you get them excited about your vision or your project. And it's not really about taking names, it's about putting all the names on the board and saying, okay, how do we get there?
You have to endure the 150 days that suck, that just are miserable, to be able to enjoy the 215 other days.
My success has always been in rallying teams, rallying them, getting them going, helping them work hard, deliver really hard results. That has been something that I've been able to do hands down.
I am so excited to speak with Katie Harnetiaux. Katie is the president of USL Spokane, both a men's and women's professional soccer team here in Spokane. She is as well, has corporate background in marketing from Starbucks, Amazon. She's a mother. She is a wife. She is an amazing hearted individual that I am so excited. Here's the last, cherry on top. She is one of our speakers at the Impact Driven Leader Summit 2025. It is May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. So if you're listening to it, you still have time to get tickets. We'd love for you to be there to sit down and listen to Katie and hear what she has to share, but beyond what she has to share. So Katie, so excited for you to be here. Man, I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Talking about leadership is pretty much my most favorite thing to talk about besides my kids.
Really?
Yeah, I love my kids. Kids first, then leadership, then business. Yeah.
Okay.
That's husband great. Too, but
good. Yeah, throw that in there.
Throw that.
Well, share with us why. Why do you love to talk about it?
It's funny, when I was growing up, it was, oh, Katie's such a leader. Katie's such a leader. But I think they really meant Katie was really bossy and Katie was a name taker, in class. And I, was a little, there's an old movie with Matthew Broderick and it's called, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this woman in it, Tracy Flick, and she is type A, crazed, running for, it's called Election. Running for student body president. You get this idea of what leadership is for women. But then I think what is so authentic is as we get older, we really come into our own and we know it's about leading, not about being bossy. It's about growing and changing your leadership style. It's about learning how to lead through people, not tell people what you expect of them. So it's there's so many nuances to it. And I think that's why it's fun for me to talk about, because I'm a student of it. I have been at every level. So it's really fun.
Where did you recognize that growth change? You talk about from being bossy, ooh, that doesn't work. I need to be different. Where did that change for you?
I think it changed throughout the course of time, right? As the more experiences you have, the more group experiences you have. In college, I remember taking a group communication class, and it was about, it should have just been called Leadership 101, but it was really about how do you operate in groups and how do you communicate in groups. And I remember I was sitting there and, group projects, right? And you're just kind of waiting. And then ultimately somebody picks up the pen and does the work, right? And I remember picking up the pen and I remember thinking to myself, I'm either going to do this work or I'm going to get these people to do this with me. And all of a sudden I was part of, being a cheerleader, being a motivator is getting people on the bus to do stuff that maybe they don't always want to do. And I think as I've gotten older, it's you can get so much out of people if you motivate them. And if you get them excited about your vision or your project. And that seems very trite, but it actually is true. You get so much more out of people when you get them excited about it. And so I think that was where I was it's not really about taking names. It's about putting all the names on the board and saying, okay, how do we get there?
I love that. I love that. So that was in college, right?
So that was in college. That was the beginning of me going. I think 5-year-old Katie, if someone had asked her what she wanted to be, she would have told you very clearly. My mom will attest to this. I think I said I wanted to be president of the United States without any cavities. So that was my goal. So I always knew I was going to do something in leadership. I just wasn't sure what that was going to look like.
Fast forward to where you're at now. You and Ryan, your husband, kind of take on this kind of monumental challenge, I'm going to say. And for the audience, let me give a little bit of perspective. So you guys started two professional soccer teams, a men and a women's soccer team, from scratch.
Yeah.
Not really expansion teams, but expansion teams, because one of the leagues was brand new. The other one was existing beforehand. So had a team start into it. That was something you guys decided to do from both of you having previous pretty successful corporate careers.
Yeah.
What was the impetus to make that jump first? Like, man, that seems like a good challenge. What was that?
I mean, I think the reality is you have to be a little bit crazy to do something like this, right? So the impetus was, Ryan had this idea that we were going to do this. And ultimately, my whole career and his whole career, even though he was in money management and had his own business, we'd always worked for these big kind of corporate giants, right? And this was an opportunity for us to do it ourselves and to work for ourselves and to say, we're going to do something big. We're going to give something back to the place we both grew up, but we were going to do it with like everything that we'd learned and everything that we knew, and truly our passion for goodness and leadership, and thought, we were going to embark on this, and so we did. And I only say this kind of a year into this, but
Well,
when you have
it's been longer than a year.
Yes, that's true. I guess, but like when you bring home your first kid and you're like,
Okay.
yeah, I know what I'm doing, but you don't know anything, right? You know nothing.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I
They're
think
like, they gave this person to it. Like, what are
like
they
they let
thinking?
us, Ryan has this story. He's like, we brought home our daughter Riley, and he's like halfway across the bridge into Seattle, and he's like, they gave us a baby and we do not know what we are doing, right? And in a way, I kind of liken the last 3 years to that. Is, we got the nod that we could do it. And like you said, and again, our craziness said we needed to launch both these teams in the same year, because it was really important to me that the women's team didn't come as an afterthought or a secondary thing. It was super important that we told the community both these teams matter. Both of them are playing at really significantly high levels, the women's team especially, and they're not an afterthought. And so so it's like having twins. We bring home these
There you
twins.
go. Perfect example,
And
twins.
and Ryan and I are like, okay, well, we all of what we knew to be true in business was from larger matrixed organizations that were already built, that we got to come into and leave a mark on, with our own unique spins. And this was a really different, because we were creating it from nothing, like, from the ground up.
So that's the pie in the sky. Like, this is going to be amazing. And, it's kind of like, oh, we want to have kids and it's going to
Yes.
be so amazing. And
They're
then
going
you
to
stop
sleep
it.
through the night. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to be great.
Yes. And then you bring them home and you just want to sleep.
Yeah, you're so tired.
And they won't leave.
Yeah, no.
I think
and
that for Kelly, that was the biggest thing for her, is this thing never leaves.
No, they're there.
It's always here.
Yes. That is exactly how we felt with this thing. I mean, I'm not sure that Ryan and I have slept in the last 3 years. Like, we have 3 kids, and we are parenting like really hands-on. But like, this is 2 brand new children that require full-time care, 100% of everything that we have. And so, Yeah, and you do get tired and you're like, I want a nap. And there's no naps. There's no naps. And so far we have no babysitters.
Okay.
So it's
I
a
mean,
little rough.
here's as you say that, and I think back what I just commented about Kelly saying this kid never leaves. I didn't have that perception. Okay, so it could be a dad. I'm not breastfeeding, I'm not doing all those things, but I grew up on a farm. And I grew up in a family business on a farm. And the workforce was my parents, my sister, and I. It never left, and it wasn't like, oh, tomorrow it won't be here. Eventually, when we liquidated it and we sold it, and that was so outside of the norm. It's like very much like you, in a way, lost a child.
Totally.
Something just ripped away from you, and so the idea and concept of I can understand that they're always there
Yep.
because I was born into that. But I can also at the same point, like where you say, like this never stops.
Yeah. Well, it was like, I'm sure for you growing up, if you had a cold or the flu, it wasn't like you didn't have to go do your chores. Like, those are animals and they need to be taken care of, right? And it's like, Tyler, we need you. Like, that's your job. And so I think, there were times where I was like, oh gosh, to go back to Amazon and to have a sick day, like a sick day, or a vacation where I could turn my phone off, right? And so those have been some things that we've like had to learn how to muddle through. Luckily, we have really good senses of humor, and so we make each other laugh. Like, because otherwise, you probably feel the same thing. It's like you got to laugh because this is craziness.
This was my word of the year a few years ago was endure. And the day that it hit me, it was in December. It was like give around the middle of December. And as you know, Spokane kind of like very often gets a cold snap in that frame. And we happen to have snow and I'm out taking care of my cows and there's like a foot of snow. It's like 9 degrees. And Kelly, my wife, is just like, oh, you just love it. I'm like, no, I freaking hate it. This sucks. But this is what I understood. And what I understood from that word endure is you have to endure the 150 days that suck, that just are miserable, to be able to enjoy the 215 other days. And how much does that resonate with what you've gone through that maybe you didn't expect?
So I love that because for us, it's game day. That's our special. So like when we go to game day, walking in for me, I like to stand by the gates and I like to hear the little kids come in. I like to hear the parents like say, "Don't run." I love the energy when they bust through the gates. And that to me keeps me going in those 190 days. That's the piece for me that says we are doing what we said we'd do. We are giving the community a healthy place to come together outside, watch a sporting event. And so it was hard during the winter because we didn't have a game at home from October 27th until last weekend, March 8th. And those are some long months. And you're working your tail off, but you don't get to see the people come in the stadium. And so you miss that. So I think I totally get that.
We've talked a bit about this, and I mean, this is to share with the audience. It is because of you and Ryan and this desire to impact the community that created our relationship. As far as my wife and I and you guys being a part of what you guys are doing, and there's also an element where you shared this is bigger than us. And when I say that, it's bigger than, hey, we're going to do this and make this mark on Spokane. No, we're going to create an atmosphere that players get treated differently because they deserve to be, that, your staff gets created differently. How much of that was pulling from your experience at Starbucks or Amazon where you saw some of the good and you're like, people deserve that. I want to give that to them if they don't have it.
Yeah, I think that's such a crux of what we said we wanted. One of the things, so Ryan and I both grew up in Spokane, and one of the things that has been so apparent to us in our community of Spokane is that we've done a really good job in the last 40 years of exporting talent out of Spokane. And I am an export. In order to have the job I wanted to have in life, we had to move to Seattle. And so when Ryan and I talked about doing this, we said, what if, and this was our pie in the sky, right? What if we were able to create something in Spokane that increased jobs, that we could focus on diversity, that we could have another business that could grow people, that could develop people, that we would have a technical side where kids like this pathway to pro wouldn't have to export talent to the west side, but that we could grow talent and keep it on the east side of the state. And for us, it was not just a community asset, but like a people asset. How could we do that? And how could we do it so that maybe the Katie Harnetiaux of 20 years from now can have a big job where she's global, but she's doing it out of Spokane? I think that was our pie in the sky. Like, that's what we keep focused on.
Yeah. Was that influenced because of your experiences with those such, like, I would say, household names?
I think so. Yeah. Like you're saying, like Amazon and Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you look in the last 25 years you throw in maybe Apple, you throw in, recently what Elon has done for his organizations. You look at these, like, everyone knows their name. It's kind of like Cheers, like everyone knows your name, but it will look at the good side of it. Is like those Google, those organizations have created opportunities for people that they never knew existed, and they all started from this small little seed.
yeah, I think I have been so lucky to have worked for what I consider two of the most customer centric, brand centric organizations in the world. Whether or not you like Starbucks or Amazon, they both started with people having an idea, one person having an idea that they could change and bring something to a customer that they didn't have. Howard's goal was to have coffee on the corner, right? He
Yeah.
said, we should have coffee shops just like in Europe. People should come together, the community should come together. And he was maniacal about, in a positive way, but that brand, right? We weren't going to denigrate the brand. It was about that, and he worked hard and he almost lost it and it came back. And in a way, Amazon, what we know today, I mean, he started it in his garage. And it was all about, how do we get stuff to people fast? And then it wasn't just fast, it was, how do we get stuff to people fast, but how do we get it there in a way that they don't even know that they want it, but then they want it? And I am so lucky to have worked in these organizations where I am so customer focused. Like, I think about these fans all the time. I'm like, what does it take for them to sit in that stadium? Do they want their kids with them? Do they would not want their kids with them? Am I supposed to put a playground out somewhere, right? Like, do they want, different food? Where do they want to park? Like, all of these things. And I'm so excited about that. Like, that's the best part of anything. And do I think we can do that in Spokane? 100%.
So that's the dream. That's the mission.
That's the mission.
Where's the climb been uphill?
So I was thinking about that because it has been in the place I did not think it would be in. And I thought it would be in the business side of it, right? I thought it would be in Ryan and I learning to navigate each other in business.
Like, that's a whole different podcast.
And you know what? We should have that podcast because that one is
we should. Hey, I will commit to that because that is a great topic that, Kelly and I have had to work through, and, in business. So we'll put just a little bookmark there for you guys to come back. We'll talk about that one. Or, hey, just plan on being at the Impact Summit, the Impact Driven Leader Summit, May 7th and 8th, and we will get into that one because I know it'll be valuable.
If people come to that summit, we'll even have Ryan stand up in the back and he can just nod and say, yes, that's
same with
true.
Kelly can be off to the
together.
side and she'll be like, oh, jeez. So the piece that surprised you.
People.
Why did it surprise you first?
So my success has always been in rallying teams, rallying them, getting them going, helping them work hard, deliver really hard results. That has been something that I've been able to do hands down. This, building this from scratch, building a brand from scratch, two brands, building an organization. I was thinking about it, and it's like this. Have you learned a new language ever? It's
Partially. I'm not fluent, but yeah.
so when you learn a new language, you learn the words, right? And
Yeah.
then you learn the language, then you learn a dialect, right? And then you learn slang.
Okay.
I did not realize it would take us so long in building a culture that the language took much longer than I thought. And we haven't gotten to slang yet. And I would say we are just now in the dialect phase. Like people now have the words, but it hasn't been easy. We've lost people along the way that are hard losses, right? And there are people that Brian and I knew, and it's tough to hear someone say, "We think you've got this great vision and you're gonna get there." But I don't want to work in the messy part of it in the beginning, right? And I thought that I could get us to slang a lot faster than we have been. And I think that's the nature of a startup, right? Is, you're in this messy beginning. I just didn't think it would. There's been so much that's been the hardest part, I think, for me, is I have this vision of what the culture will be. We're just not there yet.
There's twofold. This to me, it comes to the idea of empathy. And, to me, empathy is on a spectrum. You're either an asshole like I have been in my life, or you're a doormat. And, it's to me, healthy is in the middle. And it takes some experience. It takes some learning. To me, it takes understanding how you show up. And as someone that I know to be very people focused, to be relationship focused, to love building it and holding deep connections with people, is that what you just shared? Hey, I believe in what you're doing, but I don't like all this messiness. Does that hurt?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't make me cry on the podcast, Tyler. But
It's either do it now or do it later.
Fine.
All right. Hey, we've talked about this earlier.
Yes.
You wouldn't be the first one. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm not unique. Yeah, it hurts. I think what it does is it makes me feel like I haven't been what they needed, and so that is hard. And coming from a place where I have prided myself on my management style, to have someone, and I'm not saying people are like walking out going, "We dislike you, Katie," but I feel bad because I'm like, gosh, that's a really good person. They have really great skills. Maybe this isn't right for them right now, but it will be later, but it's not right now. And I have to be okay letting that go. And I've had to I've had to learn a lot more about my people pleasing. Like, I don't think I'm doormat, but I think I have shifted my leadership style to meet other people. And in order for this to be successful, I have had to shift to a side that I am not always as comfortable in, right? Which is, when you are a person who is building something like this, it's funny, I talk about Howard and Jeff, but they were maniacal at points, and now I know why. And you it's not because they were jerks. It was because they knew if they even slipped on the brand, or if they shifted on the mission, that the whole thing could fall apart. And so yeah, those are some different skills that I'm having to learn along the way.
As I reflect and think about, Howard Schultz and Jeff Bezos and the idea, and I think whether they've shared it or we've recognized it, and as people have gone through the experiences like you have, is learning and really understanding What do I need to be maniacal about? And where do I need to allow creative freedom and allow people to really embrace it and make it their own? And that's a massive lesson to learn that I think just it has to be learned through experience.
And I think this is the irony there is that Ryan and I are learning it together in different ways, right? So, like, on top
So
of,
explain for people listening that don't understand the position you have compared to Ryan, your husband, in the organization.
yeah, so Ryan actually owns he leads the entity that owns both of the clubs. I lead the clubs. So if you think about it, that at some point, Aquis Sports, which is what oversees Velocity and Zephyr, we could have other clubs come in. We could own other assets outside of that. So really, that's his world. And so learning how to navigate, as a president of a pretty big organization. And then also, technically the board is my husband, but I'm like not going there. So it's like, how, right? But like, if one of us pulls back and the other person doesn't want to pull back, right? Then we have to discuss it and talk about it. And so as we've navigated this new world order of each of us figuring out when is the time to lean back and when do we have to let the team go, that's an at-home conversation, right? So then Ryan and I are having one-on-ones about this, and we're like, okay, this is the time. I think you do get to a good place though where you're like, the team is efficient enough to be able to have freedom, right? And this is why I love process, because I'm like, if you can buy into my process, then I can lean back a little bit because I know the guardrails are there for you to remain successful. So that's kind of where we've been kind of there.
What's something, whether it's talking about the culture, whether it's talking about the great vision that you have, what's been a positive surprise that you found that, oh, I didn't expect people to like run with that, but internal to the organization, that's what gets them excited.
It's so funny because there's two different teams, right? But we have the same front office that delivers against both the teams. And the front office has, we've had a lot of conversations about these are pro athletes. They will come into Spokane, depending on their length of contract, then they will leave Spokane, right? And the front office has attached to these players in such great ways, like, seeing them out in public and hanging out with them, not hanging out with them, but seeing them out and, just like knowing about their lives. And, when we have a player with an injury. So where I thought there would be more of like a line of demarcation between the front and the technical side, I don't see that as much. So that's been a pleasant surprise. The community has been amazing. And then I think one of the other big surprises is, I the USL navigating with MLS and NWSL. And I have found that it's not as rigid as people led me to believe. We have good relationships with the Sounders and the Reign, and they've been amazing partners just to even bounce stuff off of. So I feel like sometimes, when people tell you, oh, don't be friends with them, they're not going to want to be friends with you kind of thing. I haven't found that as much to be true. So that's been good.
To talk about that, is if we look at the landscape of professional sports throughout the world and in the entertainment value that it brings to communities. I actually talked to a good friend of mine about this the other day, who's an educator at Cal Berkeley. And we were talking about how, at Cal, Berkeley and Stanford, the athletic, the university rivalries. And he goes, it's really not as big as what people think. I'm like, oh, that's surprising. And what we also got in this conversation is how much sports unify cultures. You can have extreme different opinions in sports as we know it in the United States, or even as we've seen recently between Canada and US hockey. And we go around through how much sports really is a community binder.
Yeah, oh, 100%. One of the things we talk about is just we have entered into this soccer ecosystem that, we're having conversations with people. So Gareth Smith is our technical director, and he is amazing. He lives in Iowa. He is also Scottish. Uh, our daughter Riley gets an email the other day from a friend who says, I was traveling in Scotland and I was having a beer and I met this guy and he's related to Gareth. He's like Gareth's like second cousin. The ecosystem of sport is incredibly small. And you look at players and they stick together, and you look at fans and they are supportive. And it is entertainment, but in a different way. Like if you think about you go to a concert, it's an amazing concert, you have a great time, but you're not going to sit with those same people the next concert you go to, right? But at soccer games, like we now have people who are friends because their seats are sitting next to each other. They've never met each other before. And I heard them saying, I was so glad to come back to the game. So, like, community is happening in all of these different pockets when you combine a sporting event with a fan culture in a community. You can't help but basically tick every box of where we attach to people's hearts and where we can help people grow in better ways. That's the part that I'm like, I love that it feels small to me already. Like I know a couple people and I have like contacts, right?
Yeah.
But I feel it all the time that sporting events are different for community. They are uniting.
It's one of my beliefs is that COVID, the pandemic, taught specifically our world, our nation, is that and entertainment, especially sport, because it's different, like you said, than a concert, than a Broadway show. Like there's an inherent connection to it, that regardless of what our economy does, there's going to be a place because it is a safe haven. How much does that really, as you guys project forward, right? You're in a business, there's economies, how much does that kind of like, oh, we really got to master that experience so that when people are getting here, they're getting value?
So I think about this all the time. I think if I'm a family and I have $100 to spend, and I have two kids and a mom and a dad, and I'm looking at my weekend and I'm like, I've got $100. I could probably go to a movie and get popcorn so I could matinee it. Probably. There, like we could do something. We could go to a park. We could go to the lake. We're lucky in Spokane. There's a
Mhm.
lot of outdoor activities to do. But if I want to take my kids to something, I want to make sure that we are in an affordable place for people to go as a family. And it is important to me that families spend time outside and that they spend time going to sporting events. And if this is something that they want to do, that they can do it, right? Which is why we donate like up to 700 tickets per game. We do things to make sure that like families, people can get out here because I think it is important. And COVID taught us a lot. And what it taught us is that we need each other and we can't be separated. And when we're separated, like kind of scary things happen to our kids and our communities. And this is a safe place. So COVID could happen again, and this is outdoors, people. It's an outdoor stadium. If you need a mask, put it on and get out there. But I guess I feel like that kind of connection has to happen, and we have to be affordable enough that it happens for everybody.
I want to transition and I want to hear your heart. You have a daughter, two sons. Your oldest is a daughter like us, two sons like us, involved in a lot of activities. Your daughter works in the organization. One of the things that I've heard from you, I've recognized from you, and I appreciate is there's no barriers based upon, who you are as a person, a gender, a race, any of those things. How much does that center back to the little Katie at 5 that I could do whatever, and continuing to prove that for both for all of your family, but also realizing that, oh, I didn't know what I was really taking on.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. When I was younger, I never really played sports. So I grew up in a single parent household. It was try to make ends meet a lot of the time. And so that was not necessarily where energy was focused, how I grew up. Ryan grew up differently. He played sports his whole life, and he's a natural athlete. The guy played everything, right? Specifically soccer. So when we had kids, we knew, like, I knew what I wanted from as a mom. I knew what I wanted to give them. I never wanted them to doubt that they were the most important people in our lives. I never wanted them to doubt that they could do anything that they wanted to, and that I would always be there for everything, cheering them on, being their biggest supporter. So for me, like, little Katie has achieved, right? Like I'm happy because my kids are happy. And our daughter does work for us. She started as an intern. She won't leave. We're like, you can leave if you want, but she's really happy and she's thriving, and it's amazing. And that is a gift. That's a gift to work with your kids. And this is a shout out to anybody who gets to work with their children. You'll never have a better, more pride filled moment in your life than watching your kids succeed at work. It's so beautiful. But our boys have played sports also their whole lives. And we've had that opportunity to be sports parents. And, I guess at the end of the day, we've kind of done with this club what we did as parents, right? We are supportive. We're going to open doors. We're going to make it so that if you want to do it, you still have to pack your bags and get your cleats together and be in the car with your own water bottle, because I'm not packing it. But if so, then I'll drive you to where you need to be. So I kind of feel like we did that with this club too, right? Like, this is what we know. We know how to do that.
I guess dealing with our world in regards to, whether gender is a barrier or not.
Yeah, I mean,
And I
it
think,
is.
okay, yeah.
I mean,
So go through that, yeah, through your experience and your lens.
yes, through my lens
Yeah,
only,
yeah.
it was for me. Always having to, when you're a woman in business, you are always having to, at the very least, represent yourself in a different way or navigate conversations in a different way. As I got further along in my career, there were less and less women in every meeting that I had. And by my last years at Amazon, there were times that I would go a whole day with meetings starting at 7:30, finishing at 5:30, and only being at the table with men. It's changing, but tech is it tends to, not be quite as diverse. And so, I was lucky my last 2 years there, my immediate manager and then my manager's manager were both women. So that was new. That was the first time in 15 years I'd worked for a woman. So I'm very cognizant, I guess, of that. And I think I also look at Riley, and her experience is completely different. So our daughter is 23, and she is getting to work in an environment where there's more women, where a woman is, her manager and her boss. And so but sports is very male. And I think I told you and Kelly this story, but the first meeting that I went to for our USL owner group, I was the only woman in the room. And it was a huge room filled with humans. And I remember, like, going to the bathroom and texting my son Austin, and I'm like, I'm the only woman in the room. And his response still floors me, but he said, well, then it's a good thing you're there, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, I guess it is. So I kind of keep that in the back of my head every day too, especially when, like, to your point, on those endure days, on those 190 days where you're just like grinding it along. I'm like, super important that I'm sitting in the seat, because, Riley will never have that experience. So Sports is pretty male.
What's interesting is coming from agriculture, and agriculture, again, very dominant male. In what is interesting about that is over the last 25 years, I've seen that completely change. And what's funny now, and I ask my friends that work in agriculture. I have a couple people part of my roundtable that are in human resource, and it's like I look at universities and the university I went to, and I'm like, where are the boys? Where are the men? Because all the competitions are like dominant female, and it's just like I just recognize I don't care. I grew up in a family like my mom was right there. There was no difference. If I was going to do it, my sister could do it. It was just like whatever. And so that's my lens. I'm like, I've never had that. No, you need to go over there. I'm like, no. If you can do it, I mean, my grandmother ran a farm, ran a, mechanic shop. She was, could do anything. Like that's my background. And so when I hear, and when Kelly has shared at times where she's recognized, like, we're in a room and there's a couple females, but yet they totally disregard us. I'm like, I don't recognize it because it's never been something that I've been aware of doing. So it's like, oh, okay, if you say so, I hear you. So again, back to the point of an industry that has now, I look at universities and their competitions, and it is overwhelmingly female. I'm like, okay, great. I don't care. But it's like, what are the boys doing? Are they spending more time in sports? Are they doing other things? And that's a question people can't answer. And to me, this point, it's like, why are there so many more men in the room? Is it because they've said this is not a place for you? Or, well, that's just what they tend to do. I look at it very much of again, from my experience, there's not a mandate. Well, this is only, like, that's foreign to me. And so I just wonder.
I agree. It's interesting. It's kind of a chicken or the egg conversation, right? So I think if you take it back to money, which is an easy way to take it back, if you think about sports, have traditionally in the U.S. and worldwide, but I'm comfortable speaking about the U.S. have had money has been given to boys sports, men's sports,
Yeah,
football,
for
basketball,
whatever reason.
because they were money drivers for the universities typically, right? If you had a big university. So then all of a sudden Title IX happened, and then there was these different, let's have some women's sports, but there still wasn't, and people weren't investing dollars in it, right? It was, we have it. And so what we're seeing now is, I think the pendulum has swung a little bit. And what we're seeing now is people investing in women's sports. And we're seeing people saying, well, it's great that we have, a football team, but how are we spending money? What's the equivalent for women? And honestly, at least they're asking the questions. That's a big next step. One of the things that, I think about from soccer is, the starting, if you look at little kids soccer, it's all girls. And those girls are out there and they're just, kicking those balls, and they're 2 years old and they're little kickers because the moms are like, give me something, right? So soccer tends to be this starting sport for boys and girls.
Yes, totally.
And what I'm interested in seeing is, over the next 10, 15 years, can we continue that so that those boys and girls are still playing soccer in high school and college, and that we're not losing one in service to another, right? That yes, the dollars need to be put into women's sports because frankly, it's been underserved for too many years. But what should be our ideal is like moving towards a place of equity and moving towards a place of, okay, here's what we've got. We've got, we are investing in sport because, to your point earlier, sport is community. It brings people together. I want people to be playing sports longer. I want us to get out of this, oh, you have to decide what sport you're going to play by the time you're 10 years old because it's, pay to play all this way through. What we will lose is we will lose that community. We'll lose that ability to tell our kids how great they are when they hit a pitch, or, like, I am worried about that. As a parent, I am worried about that.
Well, as a parent of, I know your youngest is a multi-sport athlete, right? And it's the pressure that maybe isn't always said, but sometimes is unsaid, or how coaches handle the conversation of, hey, I have to choose. And instead of, all right, I get it. You have to make a choice. We'll work through that, saying, if you don't choose me, then you're dead to me. And I've had to walk through that.
That is where we are failing, because that is where we are taking away something that, like, if you look at the numbers, what is it 3% of all CEOs played a sport all the way through college, even if it was a club sport, right? We teach teamwork and leadership through sport. So if you take that away from everybody but like a percentage of the children who, honestly, like what Leo was, that's our youngest, what he was really great at 5, he's like a completely different kiddo now, right? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Or even 10 or 12 or 14. And I think that's, I mean, it's a whole different subject, but it comes back to this idea: when we make individuals choose on a threat, instead of saying, hey, embrace it. I mean, I look at it now that, having a youngest son who's a focused basketball player, but has played football, who, kind of in a way, whether he wanted to or not, kind of got forced out of football. And now he's like, I'm just going to be basketball. I'm like, I wish you wouldn't. And we hope to work through that. To another son who is a football player, but for, as I shared earlier, got forced out of soccer. And he played at a very high level, because it's like, unless you want to play in college, you're dead to me, which was told to him. Which was not directly, but very indirectly. Oh, you want to play football? Then fine, you'll never play. Oh, what? I'm one of the best athletes. Like, there's a place for me. I'm like, no, you're not going to adhere to my rules. Then I don't need you. And those are the things that I think what happens is it then spoils the love of the sport.
Yeah. Right. Because tell me right now, does your son love going to soccer games? Or is he like, Dad, I have feelings about soccer? Right.
I don't think he has those, but he does. I don't think he knows it, but he like, for me, I played growing up, played soccer. I played a little bit of football, but I love the sport because I got to embrace it. But I just wasn't the athlete to play. And I love both sports, and I love soccer more because it gave me an opportunity that I couldn't get otherwise. And that's why I wanted my kids to play and be involved. And all three of them played to some extent. And now I see this where they each have a different relationship with the sport. And probably our middle son is the worst, based upon whether it's a reminder or not that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I couldn't make my choice.
Exactly. That you choose to hang out with who tell you you're not good enough. I mean, I don't surround myself with people who tell me that I suck. Right. So I wouldn't choose that for my children. I mean, I'm always about what we say in our brains matters, how we talk to ourselves. And the reality is, if you've got an adult telling you that you're not good enough for X, like that's not going to feed my self-esteem. And honestly, the best thing that we can do for our kids these right now is to feed their self-esteems, because the world is hard. And so it's like, I want them to know that, this is a safe place, and sports should be a safe place, especially like up to high school. Like, these kids are kids still. So, and that, I feel really compelled with what we're doing to build that pathway, to say, if we're offering a vision in Spokane for little boys and little girls to see grown-up people playing a game that they love. So if you're doing little kickers or you're doing soccer tots, and then you go to a game and you can see people that are grown-ups and they're fun and they're cool and they're playing the same game, you're going to see yourself in that person. And it's going to help, that the brain is going to grok that more than it's going to hear that, crazy coach's voice. And, hopefully we can help establish that for them.
As we get to the end of our time in this session, for those listening in that will hopefully join us, that will join us May 7th and 8th, what's something that maybe you haven't talked about here that is really on your heart that you want people to be able to hear in kind of, again, your experience and or kind of, encourage them to walk through?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm really leaning heavily on right now, and I haven't had as much time as I used to, is I truly believe in mentorship, and I believe in finding people everywhere that can help you be better. At 49, I feel like I need to still be cultivating mentors. And I think there's that saying that says, if you find yourself as the smartest person in the room, you need to find a new room. And I add on to that. I think you need to find a new room, and you need to bring people into that room that you just left. And one of the things that I really want to encourage people in May when we talk is, if you are sitting in that room and you listen to us talk and you don't have a mentor, like, go get one and we will help you find one. And if you need one, and if you aren't being one, you're denying the world of your experience. And there are other people who need that. And I want them to get that out of our conversation too, that sometimes I think those panels are so great. And if we inspire you, great. But guess what? You have a story that's just as inspiring. Go find somebody who needs to hear it.
I love that. And, quite honestly, that's my aim and mission, is to provide a community and connections where people can find others in the room and, relate to and share. And one of the great things that we're going to do, and you're going to be a part of through the VIP session, is be able to interact, engage, and work together. That's what I love. That's what's been transformative to me. And it's very much like you said, being in those rooms to where I have a little bit to offer, but others have to offer. I look forward to it and can't wait for you to spend time with us and everyone that is there.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
If people are local and they want to make it to a match, if they want to learn more about what the USL Spokane soccer teams are about, where can they find out more information?
uslspokane.com. You can get tickets to the games. You can shop our store. You can, if you have questions, we have an email address on there. Anything that you want to know about both the teams, come and hang out with us at a game. We have double headers twice a month practically. So we would love, and Ryan and I are there. So come up and say hi.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everyone watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to get notified whenever we drop new content. And if you're listening, whether it's on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen, if you could rate and review this episode, it will help more people find and hear from impactful leaders just like Katie. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being here. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.